There should be a perpetual war on the people. They say there's always a war for the people, but too often it's a war on the people. You know, there's a war going on in Afghanistan and expanding. Is that supposed to be for us? Hardly. There's been a war going on in Iraq now for 6 or 7 years, $1 trillion spent, and thousands of lives, American lives lost, and hundreds of thousands of others' lives are lost. And that war is not for us. That's a war against us. It's consuming us. What about this war on drugs? We don't need a war on drugs. We have to have a war on poverty. We're opposed to poverty. Who's for poverty? Yes, so we're going to have a war on poverty. And what do they give us? A lot more poverty. Personal liberties are obviously part of this, but in order to have liberty protected, we have to come to our senses on foreign policy. The founders were correct on foreign policy. They gave us strong advice. It's written into the Constitution we can defend our country, but we're not supposed to be the policemen of the world. And now that we're broke, and more people are starting to recognize we're broke, it's getting more opportunistic for us to say, one of the solutions may well be, just bring our troops home. I'm not talking about Iraq. I'm not talking about the Middle East. I'm not talking about Afghanistan. I'm not talking about the attacks on Pakistan. I'm not talking about our Navy around that's surrounding wants to boycott the Iranians. I'm not talking about the troops we have in Korea, the troops we have in Europe, the troops we have in Japan, the 800 bases we have around the world. I'm talking about all of them. We can save. We could inject that into the economy by cutting the income tax. Let more people have it. Then if we reject the notion of the last 35 years of government managed care and reject the notion that the answer is socialized medicine, believe me, the American people can get a lot better health care if we just get the government out of the way. Last week there was another bill passed. It was passed under suspension, passed rather easily. It had to do with regulating food. They want everybody here to have safe food. We're going to depend on the post office to give us safe food. But it's an unbelievable bill. Regulating and inspecting every single thing about food is going to be very bureaucratic and very, very expensive. Some food prices are going up. Just like when they regulated and got involved in medicine, the prices go up. When they got into the housing business, did poor people end up with houses? Yeah, temporarily, and then they lost them quickly. And the housing prices went up, and then there's as well. Governments can't manage. They can't manage anything. They can't manage their own personal affairs most of the time.
Corporations are worse.
What they can manage is their overseas travel. They love overseas traveling. One time, somebody asked me, why don't you go overseas? You don't like the way that money's spent. Go over there and inspect it and inspect how they're doing it so you can be more informed on what's happening with all that. I said, I don't need to go overseas to know that we shouldn't be voting for any foreign aid whatsoever. That doesn't seem to matter much. They really, you'd think after this last week of a few people being upset at these town hall meetings, they'd be paying more attention. But no, it's still going through Congress right now. Over $500 billion is being presented by the House to buy more airplanes for the Congressman to fly around the world. Not only is it first-class flying, they're big jets, and they're used by, I guess they need about 8 members, but you always have four Republicans. You're going to be bipartisan. 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats. Take the wise way. You go on big jets. And what really gets to me about some of that is I find some people who fly in those jets burn out all that energy are greenies. And sometimes we get a bad rap because we don't care about the environment. You know, if you're a true constitutionalist, good conservative, libertarian, you care about property. That's why it should be in the hands of private individuals. They take much better care of property than anybody else. They burn more energy than about 50, except for about 15 countries. They burn more energy than all the rest of the countries. But just think of the energy and the carbons that they put out in the air in countries like Iraq. I had somebody in my office the other day, and the lady's expertise, she was a journalist on these burn pits. I had to confess I didn't know a whole lot about burn pits. But she says that it's been traditional, but they are especially bad in Iraq. That means that when Halliburton and other companies get paid $15 millions of dollars to do their things up there, all their waste gets into a pit, an open pit. Medical supplies, rubber supplies, chemical supplies, and these pits burn constantly. And the predictions now are made that we have trouble with Persian Gulf War syndrome. That there's going to be a lot of that. But we already have such a tragedy going on. The lost lives, of course. Between the 2 wars, we lost 5,000. We had 40,000 who have been injured. And we have hundreds of thousands who now are applying, and probably most of them legitimately. People coming back who have post-traumatic stress syndrome. Epidemic of suicide these days. I have one staff person whose brother's on his way back to Iraq the 5th time to Iraq. And then they wonder why, as a candidate, our campaign ended up getting more money from the military than all the rest put together. Our financial affairs, I don't need to tell you, they're a mess. But they're probably even worse than I can even comprehend. Because I don't think anybody can quite comprehend $100 trillion of financial obligation. And the reason you really can't comprehend it is because these obligations are floating. They're not fixed. They talk about Social Security going back broke in a certain year. Well, there's no way they can predict. Right now, they're moving up to date. Why? Less people are working, the cash flow is much reduced. And therefore, it's shortening the period of time where it'll be a negative balance. But then the other part that they don't know is what the costs are going to be, what the cost of living will be. It's going to be automatically higher. So your prices are going up, your revenues are going down, less people working, more people living longer, and on, and yet they claim that they're good managers of our affair, and all it is a tremendous attack on our liberties. There's been an 18% reduction in tax revenues since the recession. I think we should cheer that.